Revenge films.
My name is Jessica Smith. I live with my husband, Thomas Smith, and our 3-year-old son, Henry. I'm a full-time housewife in a happy family of 3. When Henry was born, he was diagnosed with an egg allergy. There were limited things that he could eat, but other than that, he was super healthy, and he's growing up to be a strong boy. Most people understood that my son had the egg allergy and treated him accordingly, but there was just one person that refused to understand, and that was my mother-in-law. When my mother-in-law found out that Henry had an allergy, she said,
"Oh, please. All allergies are just a superstition. Mothers these days are just too overprotective."
And she thought naively about my son's well-being, which was concerning. Of course, my husband didn't think well of his mother who said that, but my husband's father loved Henry, especially since he was the first grandchild. And because of that, we often went over to Henry's parents' house, mainly so that his father could see Henry. Recently though, whenever we would go over there, as soon as my husband wasn't around me, my mother-in-law started harassing me. One day, our family went over to visit them. My mother-in-law asked me,
"Oh dear, where is Thomas right now?"
He received a phone call from somebody from his office, so he's outside taking the work call. Why?
"Is that so? So have you brought Henry snacks for today?"
Yes, they're right here.
"Why do you only prepare such cheap-looking crackers? You should give him cake or ice cream. The poor boy."
Because he has allergies, there are limited snacks that Henry can have.
"I feel so sorry for my grandson who was born with this body. But you know what? That is his mother's responsibility and your fault.
Sorry, what?
If you don't raise him more properly, no matter how much time passes, it's never going to get better. Poor Henry."
Little by little, my mother-in-law was harassing me more about my son, and it made me want to avoid going over to their house or seeing her. When I spoke to my husband about it, he was supportive, for he told me that he would talk to his father about it, and that we could avoid going over to their house for a while. When I didn't have to go and see my mother-in-law, I felt so much better. I wasn't as stressed anymore, and I was able to live a peaceful life with my family. However, it wasn't like we could avoid going over to Jonathan's family's house forever, especially since they kept asking to see Henry. So I thought, when I felt emotionally ready for it, then maybe we could go back over there. But then one day, when I was at home preparing some snacks for Henry, suddenly my mother-in-law showed up at the door, saying she decided to stop by on her way home from shopping.
"Oh, hello, Jessica. I just so happened to be in the neighborhood, so I decided to stop by on my way home for you."
"Mrs. Smith, hello, please come inside." As soon as my mother-in-law walked into the house, she laid out various snacks on the table that she had brought as a gift, including pudding. Everything that she had bought for us had eggs in them, and yet my mother-in-law tried to pretend like she didn't know and feed it to my son. I panicked and stepped in. "Mrs. Smith, please stop. I know I've told you this many times before, but he is allergic to eggs, which means that he can't eat anything that has eggs in it."
"Oh, but that's such a shame. Look at all of these things that I bought for him."
She did seem annoyed, but after I stepped in, she looked like she gave up, so I was relieved. I went back into the kitchen to pour some coffee for her, and once the water was boiled, I prepared tea and coffee for us to drink. However, the moment that I turned my back and was busy in the kitchen, I saw out of the corner of my eye that she was once again trying to feed Henry the pudding. I panicked and I ran out of the kitchen. "Mrs. Smith, please stop, it's dangerous." By the time I had raised my voice in shock, the pudding was already in my son's mouth. I dropped the coffee that was in my hand on the floor. It splattered everywhere, and I picked up my son. Within minutes, my son's face started to swell up and get red, and he started saying that he couldn't breathe and started crying. As soon as I saw that, I knew that my son's life was in danger. I dropped everything and jumped into the car with Henry and rushed to the pediatric hospital. The doctors instantly knew the gravity of the situation, as I explained what happened to them. Luckily, his life was saved. However, after seeing my son nearly lose his life, I was traumatized for a while after that. Once I calmed down, and the more I thought about the situation, the more the anger towards my mother-in-law started to boil inside of me. Henry was hospitalized, and I was shaking and crying while standing next to him. Of course, I had already contacted my husband, who came running from the office to the hospital. When he saw how panicked I was, he rubbed my back and tried to help me calm down. And then he asked me to explain the situation to him. When I told him everything, my husband was furious, and he said that he would go straight to his parents' house. By the next day, my son was feeling much better. almost as if nothing happened and we were so relieved. Once we confirmed that Henry was okay, my husband said he was going to go to his parents' house, and I decided to come with him to be witness to what happened. As soon as we arrived, Jonathan's mother tried to act like she had nothing to do with it, as she said,
"How is Henry? Is he okay? I was so worried about him."
When I heard that and saw how she was behaving, my anger was about to blow its lid off. But my husband must have known how I felt, and as if to redeem my feelings, he turned towards his mother and raised his voice like I had never heard before.
How many times have I told you that Henry can't eat eggs? Don't you realize that Henry was about to lose his life? What the hell were you thinking giving him pudding?
Oh, please. You're being so dramatic. How was I supposed to know that Henry couldn't eat pudding?
I warned you multiple times, didn't I? Not only yesterday, but before as well. And yesterday, immediately before you gave it to him, I had just told you that Henry can't eat pudding when you tried to feed it to him the first time.
Oh dear, is that what happened? I don't recall.
Don't play dumb, Mom! After we've explained it to you so many times over the years, there's no way that you would suddenly forget about that! We all know that you knew, and everybody knows that there are eggs in pudding!
As things escalated into an argument in the living room, my father-in-law overheard the commotion, and he walked in worried. When he asked us what was going on, I told him everything that my mother-in-law did. Now, my father-in-law was normally a very calm, kind man, but he loved Henry more than anything, and when he heard what happened to his grandson, he exploded in anger like a different person.
Do you have any idea what the hell you've done? How dare you make Henry suffer like that? I'll never forgive you! Why on earth did you do that?
Like I said, I didn't know. It was a mistake.
Even though you've been warned so many times, obviously there's no way that excuse is going to fly. So tell me the truth.
My father-in-law was furious, and as he cornered his wife, she finally caved.
I just thought that his allergy would get better as long as he developed an immunity to it.
And she confessed that she purposely fed him the pudding. When he heard that, my father-in-law didn't hesitate for a moment, and he kicked her out of the house. As soon as she was gone, my father-in-law turned to us and apologized over and over again for what happened. And then we went to the hospital together, and he cried as he held his grandson tightly. When we got home from my husband's family home, I was exhausted. I was worried what happened to Jonathan's parents after that, especially after his father had kicked his mother out of his house. But that was their problem, and I decided not to worry about it too much. The next day, because it was also a Sunday, and Henry had come home from the hospital, my family and I were relaxing at home together. But then out of nowhere, the front doorbell rang. When I went to go answer it, it was none other than my mother-in-law standing there. Despite the horrible thing that she had done to my son, she had nowhere to go after being kicked out of her own house, and she had the nerve to show up at my door.
I truly feel so guilty for what I've done. So please, until my husband forgives me, I want you to please let me stay here. I promise I won't give Henry any eggs.
My mother-in-law looked worn out, and she dropped down to her knees to beg me, looking like she was on the verge of tears. However, my husband came out and he refused to accept it.
What? You think things are just going to go your way that easily? Who on earth would let somebody stay at their house after they nearly killed their son? Now hurry up and get lost!
Are you just going to let your mother sleep on the streets like this?
That's a given! And don't you ever come near my son ever again! You're not welcome here!
But your father won't let me into the house either, and I have nowhere to go. What am I supposed to do, go sleep in the park?
Go sleep in the park, or do whatever you want. It's none of my business, but don't ever come back here again!
Jessica, please, say something for me.
Well, that's what Thomas has decided, and it's his house, so...
I don't want to sleep on the streets. At the very least, will you let me borrow enough money to stay at a hotel tonight?
Leave! Right now! Go away!
But look at how terrible I feel. I'm apologizing this much. Why can't you just forgive me?
My mother-in-law was still trying to speak, but my husband ignored her and simply pushed her out the front doorway. But then, immediately after that, she started calling us over and over again. It was getting so persistent that Jonathan told me to block her phone number, and he did the same. After that, my mother-in-law didn't have any money to stay at a hotel, and because her husband refused to let her back into the house, she had to spend over a week sleeping at the park. It was almost winter, and between the cold nights and the hunger that she must have gone through, my mother-in-law experienced suffering like never before. And then, she finally gave in and went begging back to her husband in tears, apologizing on her knees. He later told us that when she came home after 1 week of sleeping outside, she had lost a lot of weight and she was frail and smelled terrible. Because my father-in-law was so kind, he ended up forgiving his wife and allowed her back into the house. However, my husband didn't feel the same way. After his mother put our son's life at risk, he refused to forgive her. And so my husband and I both decided to cut off all ties with his mother. After that, over any holidays, even on Christmas and other events we would gather as a family, my mother-in-law wasn't invited nor allowed. Because my father-in-law understood how we felt about the situation, any time that we had a family gathering or event, he would make his wife stay at home alone and then come over to our house by himself. As usual, my father-in-law was obsessed with our son and spoiled him. Every single time that he would be able to see Henry, he was thrilled and was really good to our family. I'm sure my mother-in-law was jealous of that and missed her grandson as well, and we were told that she's been asking to see Henry, but my husband refused to budge. And every single time, my mother-in-law would have to simply regret what she had done. As for my son, as he got older, his allergy also got better. By the time he got to elementary school, he was actually able to eat anything. Because of the allergy, we have some terrible memories, but I can only be thankful that it didn't turn into a worse situation. My name is Nancy Williams. I live with my husband, James, and our son, Henry, in preschool. I work part-time at a diner, so after I take my son to preschool in the mornings, I work a 5-hour shift at the diner. Between raising my young son, taking care of the household chores, and working a job, I had my hands full. But I wanted to be able to save for my family's future. So with my husband's support, I do my best and go to work every day. At my part-time job, I have 1 weekday off every week. And on those days off, I often go out for lunch with the other moms. I got along well with the other moms, and every time we would have a lunch, it would be a great time. However, within the group of moms that got along well, there was one particular mom that I wasn't very fond of. And that mom was named Harriet. She was 2 years older than me and 33 years old. Whenever I would see Harriet dropping off or picking up Henry from the preschool, she was easygoing and a good person. However, it wasn't until we all started getting together for these lunches that I found out that there was a side to her that was extremely cheap and selfish. Whenever we would come to these lunches, she would always come up with some kind of reason to leave early, leaving without paying any money. This was troubling everybody. Every single time that would happen, it would mean that somebody would be stuck having to pay her part of the bill. However, eventually, she started to ask in advance for somebody specific to pay her part, and for some reason, she started asking me. I felt like I had no choice, but not once had she actually paid me back. By the time I realized it, the total amount that I had paid on her behalf had already mounted to $200. Whenever I was at the preschool, I would bring up the money that she owed me, but then she would brush me off by saying,
"Oh, come on. Please, you don't need to bring that up right here, right now. How rude."
But then, whenever I would try to collect it from her at the lunches, her response would be,
"I didn't bring any cash with me today, so let's settle this next time."
And that became the standard routine with no end in sight. This continued for some time, and it was reaching my limit, and I didn't want to pay for her anymore. That's why I decided that the next time she tried to leave without paying her part, I was going to decline paying for her anymore. And so the next day, when it came for us to leave, just as expected, Harriet got up from her seat. So I decided to confront her. "Harriet, where are you going?"
"Oh, I'm not feeling very well, so I was gonna go to the restroom."
"Can you please go after we settle the bill?"
"I'm telling you that I'm not feeling well, didn't you hear me? If I don't come back, then you can just pay for me for now, and I'll pay you back next time, Nancy."
But I wasn't going to accept that this time. So I told her that that's enough already, and I refused to pay for her. But then instead, Harriet flipped a switch on me, and she retaliated with a sour attitude. She said to me,
"Nancy, you're working a part-time job too, so you have plenty of money that you can use freely, don't you? In that case, what's the big deal about paying for my part of the bill? Don't be so cheap!"
I was working a part-time job 4 days a week in order to save money for my family, and I couldn't understand at all why I should have to use that hard-earned money for somebody that wasn't even a part of my family. Not only was Harriet being unreasonable, she was fully confident in trying to force her part of the bill onto me, and that was when I had had enough. Even though she had never once paid me back for a single one of the lunches, she already owed me hundreds of dollars at this point. I couldn't believe that Harriet was trying to make me sound like the cheap one. That was the final straw for me. And from that moment forward, I vowed that I would never pay for her again. A few days later, we were planning another lunch with the moms as usual. But then, I received a call from Harriet that her child had a fever that day and that she was no longer able to join us. We were having lunch without Harriet there, and of course, the conversation turned into the money that she owed all of us.
Hey, I've paid for Harriet a couple of times now, but she still hasn't paid me back for any of those lunches yet. Have any of you been paid back for the money that you fronted for her?
In total, I've let her borrow more than $100 with these lunches, but I haven't received a penny back for any of it yet.
The total that I've let her borrow at this point is over $200.
What? $200? That's pushing it. That's definitely bad. We have to do something and get her to pay us all back. This is ridiculous.
When I found out that I wasn't the only one that Harriet was borrowing money from, I was furious. It made me think that I needed to do something about this even sooner and take care of it. There was no option to not invite her to these lunches anymore. But even if we were to do that, it wouldn't get us our money back. And so, we needed to be careful about how to take action about it. We spent the rest of that lunch coming up with a plan, and we vowed to get back all of the money that we had let her borrow. But that wasn't going to be enough. The next time she tried to do the same thing, we came up with a strategy to get back at her. 1 week later, not knowing anything, Harriet showed up at the Italian restaurant where we had made the reservation. As soon as we all sat down and the lunch began, we were all having a great time as usual, talking about our kids and our husbands. Everybody acted like it was a normal lunch, and time flew by. And then, as we started to wrap up, we all paid close attention to what Harriet was going to do. Just as we expected, Harriet stood up from her seat. "Oh, Harriet, where are you going?"
My stomach just started to hurt, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
I actually just went to the bathroom, but all of the stalls were full, so why don't you wait? When I said that, Harriet looked stumped, and so she just sat back down in her seat. But then this time, she started to say that her head was hurting. When I suggested that she go to the hospital after we finished paying the bill, suddenly she started putting on the most dramatic act.
Ow! It's seriously so painful! I can't bear it. I can barely even sit still. My head hurts so much.
All of the other moms were sitting there without anybody showing any sympathy. Then Harriet said,
I need to go home straight away, and I need to take medicine for this right now.
And she tried to stand up. So this time I said, if your head hurts that much, and then what if you pass out on your way home? That's going to be even worse, isn't it? You should probably sit there and rest for a little bit before you stand up or try to go anywhere, don't you think?
Right. I don't know, but...
Harriet reluctantly sat back down in her seat, but this time, she once again started saying, my stomach is starting to hurt again. I need to go to the bathroom and fake holding her stomach.
Harriet, are you okay? Maybe it's better if you go to the hospital? It's pretty bad if your stomach and your head both hurt that much at the same time. That's definitely strange.
I'm gonna go look at the bathroom, so wait right here. I'll be right back. I got up and pretended to go to the bathroom, but instead I immediately called an ambulance. When I got back to my seat, Harriet's acting had become even more ridiculous, and I was shocked.
Ow! It hurts! I can't bear it anymore. My stomach hurts so much. I can't take it. I'll pay my part of the bill when I get back from the toilet, so I'm gonna go.
When Harriet grabbed her belongings and tried to leave the table, I made my move. Oh, Harriet, don't worry. I already called the ambulance for you, so you'll be okay now. When I said that, Harriet suddenly started to panic.
What? An ambulance? That's overdramatic. I don't need an ambulance.
It's not overdramatic. You seemed like you were really suffering, and I was worried. You really shouldn't push yourself if you're feeling so ill and go to the hospital.
Well, that's weird. It just seems like my headache and my stomach pain are both starting to go down. I'm starting to feel better, so there's no need for an ambulance to come. You can call them to cancel it.
But just a few seconds ago, you seemed to be in so much pain. I don't think that whatever it is would get better that quickly. Just in case, I really think that you should get on the ambulance and go to the hospital, especially with how much you were hurting.
Everybody that got there tried to stop her, and we bought enough time for the paramedics to arrive.
Oh, looks like they're here. Yes, over here. This is the person that's not feeling very well.
I got into the ambulance with Harriet as her witness, and Harriet was carried into the ambulance by the paramedics. Of course, when we got there, the doctors found that everything was normal. I explained to the symptoms that Harriet had, and so at the hospital, they took multiple x-rays and CT scans. But of course, everything came back normal. Harriet came out of the doctor's office looking quite awkward. That was when her husband came running in, but as soon as he saw Harriet standing there looking healthy, he scrunched his face.
You better not tell me you were trying to dine and dash again, Harriet!
Those were his first words. Dine and dash? What are you talking about? When I asked her husband about it, he then opened up about a problem that he was having with his wife. It turns out that in the past, every single time that Harriet would dine and dash, she would lie and say that she wasn't feeling well. She wouldn't pay and then leave the restaurant, and he told me that she was actually once arrested for it. When I heard that, I explained to him everything that Harriet had done to all of us. Her husband immediately apologized to me on the spot. He then told me that he was going to make her take responsibility for that and promised to pay us all back for all the money that she borrowed from us. Apparently, the last time that she was arrested by the police over this, her husband told her that if she ever does it again, he would divorce her. Harriet shamelessly dropped down on her knees, begging her husband for forgiveness.
Wait a minute, please! This is all a misunderstanding. I really was planning on paying everybody back. You have to believe me.
Shut up! Obviously, there's no way that I can believe you after all of this! How many times do you think this has happened?
Honey, I'm sorry. Please just consider anything but divorce. I swear I'll never do anything like this again. I promise.
That's exactly what you said last time! I can't believe you anymore! We're getting a divorce! I've had enough!
But no!
After being told her husband was going to divorce her, Harriet looked like the soul had left her body, and she dragged herself out of the hospital. After that, her husband did divorce her, and she was kicked out of the house and moved out of town. Now that she was a single mother, she was no longer able to be a full-time housewife, and in order to make ends meet while also having to pay back her debts, she's being forced to work around the clock. As for the money that she owed us, her husband fronted the payment back to all of us. Until she pays back every penny, I heard that her husband is keeping a close eye on her. As for us, ever since Harriet moved, she isolated herself from all of us, and the lunches became even more fun than before. Now that I think of that incident as a lesson that no matter how close we might be, you have to be careful with borrowing or lending money. My name is Michelle. I live together with my husband, Jonathan, and our two sons, Thomas and Henry. Ever since they were little, my husband was only sweet to the 5-year-old Thomas, but for some reason, he was extremely cold to our second son, Henry, who was only 3 years old. Thomas was much more athletic and outgoing. Then compared to his older brother, the younger Henry was more reserved. My husband was always much more harsh with Henry and would always say terrible things to him. Whenever that would happen, I wouldn't be able to stand by, so I would say something, and it would always turn into a huge fight. But then, one day, I happened to walk in on my husband saying this to Henry.
You're not my son anyway, so get out of this house! You're not part of this family!
When I saw and heard that, I couldn't believe it, and I finally lost my temper with Jonathan. We got into a massive fight, and I ended up taking both of my kids in the car and going straight to the family house. When I opened up about all of that to my parents, they made a point that Thomas looked a lot like his father, but Henry didn't look anything like him, and perhaps that's why he had such strange suspicions. They made the suggestion that perhaps we should do a DNA test. That day, at night, once the kids had gone to sleep, I got a call from my husband.
Hey, why the hell did you go to your parents' house? You better come back home right now!
If we go back, you're going to say terrible things again to Henry, and Henry only, aren't you?
If you don't want that to happen, then just come home with Thomas!
I couldn't believe the words coming out of my husband's mouth, so I decided that I was going to get a DNA test with my sons, just like my parents had suggested. Why is that your solution? How can you say that about your own child? I'm going to get a DNA test for the whole family and prove that you are biologically related to Henry.
DNA test? Why would you do that? Don't even think about it! If you do that, I'm getting a divorce!
It wasn't like a DNA test should be anything that would be negative for my husband, but for some reason, he started to panic and threaten me, and I became suspicious of my husband from that moment. But my priority was to hurry up and get the DNA test so that I could prove that Henry was my husband's son. However, when we got the results of the test, they were completely different from what I expected. And they actually created even more panic. To my disbelief, Henry was not only my husband's son, but he also wasn't my son. He wasn't biologically related to either of us. I was so shocked that I couldn't get out of bed. So in my place, my parents went to confront my husband about it. But he only insisted on one response: I don't know anything. But my parents knew that there was something behind it, and they were furious, so they decided to report it to Jonathan's parents as well. When he was cornered by his parents, my husband finally told the truth. As it turns out, Henry was actually his ex-girlfriend's child until my husband got married to me. He was apparently cheating on me and two-timing me with his ex-girlfriend. When we got married, he finally stopped, but his ex-girlfriend couldn't forget about him and was still in love with him. Not long after that, she got into a relationship with another man. However, when she became pregnant with his child, he left her and ran away. Right around the time that she was feeling devastated that she was going to become an unmarried single mother, she happened to see us in the park by coincidence. At that time, I was pregnant, and my husband and Thomas and I were walking happily in the park. And when she saw that, apparently it reignited her strong feelings towards Jonathan. And then she felt that she would be able to raise a child as a single mother if she knew that it was Jonathan's child. After she saw us that day, apparently she followed us to our house and discovered our address, and then found out the hospital that I was going to be going for my pregnancy and started going there as well. And then, when she saw me there, she acted like nothing and asked me when I was going to be giving birth. And then his ex-girlfriend asked for an induced pregnancy on the exact same day I was going to be giving birth, and succeeded in giving birth at the exact same time. Of course, my husband was there for my birth, and that was when she exposed everything to him for the very first time. And then she threatened that she was going to tell everybody that he was cheating on me with her and forced him to swap out the 2 babies. And then without knowing any of this, I had been raising Jonathan's ex-girlfriend's son this whole time. When I found all of this out, I went straight to the police station. When I told them that my child was swapped out for her child on purpose, of course the hospital had records, and she was immediately arrested. Jonathan and his ex-girlfriend were arrested together, and I heard from the police that she didn't seem to have any guilt about what she had done whatsoever. I decided to get a divorce from my husband, and I immediately hired a lawyer. Along with the divorce, I made sure to collect a settlement fee, as well as child support fees from him. However, my husband was refusing to accept the divorce, and in this situation, he started to say the most outrageous thing. This all went down when I went back to my house by myself to gather my belongings to move out. Jonathan's company had found out that he was arrested and he was fired from his job. And right when I was packing up, he came home as well. I thought that it was perfect timing, and I served him the divorce papers. Hurry up and sign these, and you can turn it in.
I told you I'm not getting a divorce! I was threatened by that woman, and I had no choice but to do as I was told. Don't you realize that I'm also a victim?
You're the one that swapped out the babies behind my back. It's almost amazing that you can say that you're a victim.
Please, I'm begging you, don't divorce me and just come home. I lost my job, and I don't know how I'm going to live by myself from now on.
Do you seriously think that things are just going to go your way like that?
We can just give Henry back to that woman since we're not even related to him. And you and I and Thomas, we can live happily as a real family, right? That would be great, right?
Are you kidding me? I have been raising Henry as my own child for 3 years now. Obviously, there's no way that I can just let him go like that at this point. I grabbed my belongings and I stormed out of the house, and I vowed to never come back to that place ever again in my life. I discussed everything with my lawyer and only spoke to Jonathan through the lawyer, and finally the divorce went through and I was relieved. However, not long after that, I received a phone call from the police. I was informed that Jonathan's ex-girlfriend had been neglecting her child and that she was arrested once again under the suspicion of child abuse. I was at a loss for words. I couldn't bear the thought that the child that I had spent 9 months growing and gave birth to was being abused and had to suffer. I asked where the child was being kept, and I decided to go and meet him. When I got to the child care center, one of the employees showed me into the meeting room, and there was a little boy sitting there who was so petite and skinny that I couldn't believe he was the same age as Henry. "What's your name, little boy?"
Shawn?
Shawn was holding a toy car in one hand, and he was looking up at me with a confused look on his face. But the moment I saw him, I ran over and I held him in my arms. The moment I hugged him, I felt a relief and a love that I couldn't put into words. and the tears started flowing down my face. And I felt that I never want to let go of this child ever again.
Why are you crying, miss? Are you sad?
I'm sorry, I must have scared you. I was just so happy that I got to meet you, Shawn. That's why I'm crying. These are happy tears.
You came here to see me.
That's right. And I'm going to come back again to see you very soon, okay?
Okay.
From there, I got to action. I went to go see Shawn as much as I possibly could, and I started making moves so that I could get Shawn back. When Jonathan's ex-girlfriend found out about the situation, she very quickly said that she would let Shawn go and pass the parental custody right over to me. I had many meetings with the child care center, and I decided to bring Shawn into my family. After having to think hard about it, I decided to take Thomas, Henry, and Shawn and raise them myself as a single mother. I received the help of my parents, and I had to take all kinds of steps so that I could be in a situation that would help me raise these 3 boys as best as I could. First, I decided that it would be best to have my ex-husband pay the child support fees in one payment off the bat, so I had my lawyer make those arrangements. In the beginning, my ex-husband tried to fight it, saying,
I don't have that kind of money!
But Jonathan's parents accepted those arrangements, and Jonathan had to reluctantly empty out his savings account and make the child support payment in one. On top of that, because I was able to receive a high settlement fee from both my ex-husband and his ex-girlfriend, I was able to renovate and expand my parents' house, and we made a room for the boys. The 3 boys were able to live freely in the big house, and it didn't take long for the 3 of them to get along like they were real brothers. But then, right as we were getting used to this lifestyle, suddenly, one day my ex-husband showed up at my house. I was letting the boys play outside in the front yard when I saw out of the corner of my eye my ex-husband standing on the other side of the fence, and it sent chills down my spine. What are you doing here?
Is that little boy Shawn?
That's none of your business, is it?
He doesn't look like me, does he?
Why are you here? What do you want?
I got fired from my job. I lost my family. I lost all of my savings, and I have nothing. My parents also disowned me, and I can't survive anymore, so please, will you give me one more chance?
Another chance?
Let's just leave Henry in this house, and the 4 of us can live as a real family. If it weren't for that woman, then that's what should have happened anyway. You also got a settlement fee from that woman too, didn't you? We can find a place to live with that money, and we can live together again.
No matter how many times I said no, my ex-husband was persistently trying to convince me, and we had gotten into an argument outside of the house. But right at that moment, a police officer just happened to come by in coincidence, and the officer simply asked a few questions. But then for some reason, Jonathan lost his temper with the police officer and started to throw a tantrum. He tried to fight the police officer, and instead he was once again arrested for assaulting a law enforcement officer. Perhaps that was enough to make my ex-husband give up, because he didn't show up around my house ever again after that. After that incident, my ex-husband had to pay a fine for assaulting a police officer, and he went into even more poverty. I heard that these days, he's living by himself and hopping around to various jobs out in the suburbs that offer housing, and he's working day until night. As for his ex-girlfriend, once she was released from prison, because she now had a criminal record of 2 crimes, none of her family wanted anything to do with her anymore. She also lost her job, and she was no longer able to live. Someone told me that she sleeps out in the park now. One day, I received a phone call from the child care center saying that Jonathan's ex-girlfriend was persistently calling them that she wants to see Shawn. But of course, I don't have any intention whatsoever of letting her come anywhere near my son. Even if she regrets letting go of him now, it's already too late. When Jonathan's ex-girlfriend realized that, apparently she disappeared into the darkness. Because I had the child support fees and settlement fee from both my ex-husband and his ex-girlfriend, I won't need to work for a while, and I want to keep it that way. I want to focus on giving my children all of the love and attention that I possibly can. I can't forgive my ex-husband or his ex-girlfriend for what they did to me, but now, this life that I have with my 3 sons has become something that is irreplaceable to me and that I treasure more than anything. From now on, I'm going to give my all to raising these boys, and I want to lead a positive life surrounded by my beautiful children. My name is Emily Matthews. I'm just your average housewife that you might find anywhere. 2 months ago, I gave birth to our very first baby, and my husband, Jonathan, and I were thrilled. Jonathan was working really hard at his job, and he was also well liked by the other employees in his company. When the baby was born, a lot of people came over to visit us and congratulate us, bringing us many gifts and kind words.
Mr. Matthews, this is to congratulate you, your wife, for the birth of your baby. We hope that you'll use it for your sweet little girl.
From me? I got you some cute baby clothes. Hope you guys like them. Wow, thank you so much. We'll be sure to use these.
Mrs. Matthews, I'm sure it wasn't easy, but congratulations on giving birth to such a beautiful baby girl.
Thank you. I have to say it was really painful, but the moment I gave birth to her, all of that pain went flying out the window, and I completely forgot about it.
Mr. Matthews, you better make sure that you help out with the baby and take care of your wife, okay? Otherwise, your amazing wife is going to leave you.
Seriously, raising a child is something that should be done as a couple. It's not just the mother.
I know. But there must be something wrong with any father who wouldn't take care of their wife and baby, especially when they're this cute.
My husband and I were on cloud 9, and we were having this joyful conversation. That is, until that day. On that day, my husband had gone to the office as usual, and I was at home alone, changing my daughter's diapers. But then, suddenly, I received a phone call, and that phone call was none other than the police. They informed me that my husband had assaulted and raped a woman, and that he had been arrested and was currently at the police station. When I heard those words from the police, my mind went completely blank, because there's no way that my husband would do such a thing. Even if he was saving somebody, he would never do anything to hurt somebody. I knew that this must be some kind of mistake. However, no matter how many times I asked the police to give me more details, the only thing they would tell me was that my husband was arrested. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on when they hung up. Not long after that, this time, I received a phone call from my husband's company. According to his colleagues from work, they said that at the time of the supposed incident, it was their lunch break, so they had gone to the nearest convenience store together as a group. They reassured me that there was an alibi, and they were the witnesses, so everything would be fine. When I heard those words, I was so relieved, and I thought that surely my husband would come home straight away. Jonathan's colleagues told me that they would go to the police station and explain that to them, so I stayed at home with my baby daughter, waiting for my husband to return. However, no matter how many hours passed, my husband didn't come home. And eventually, I received a phone call that he was going to be taken to jail. I panicked, and while carrying my newborn baby, I went to the police station, and I tried to prove my husband's innocence to the police officers. This must be some kind of mistake. There is absolutely no reason my husband would do such a thing. And more than anything, there are people who are witnesses to his alibi. So why is my husband being treated like a criminal when he is innocent? But that didn't change anything. After that, the trial started, and my husband was placed in a clearly disadvantaged situation. Of course, my husband insisted on his innocence until the very end, and his story was consistent every single time. But unfortunately, the court didn't believe him. In the end, the court declared him guilty, and my husband was sentenced to prison. The moment I saw my husband, who had clearly been sleep deprived and was now being sentenced for something he didn't do, I wasn't even able to support my body. I fell to the floor on the spot and started sobbing. Once my husband was sent to prison, it meant that I was going to have to take care of my daughter all by myself. Luckily, we had been saving for years, so I had enough in the bank account to survive. And thanks to his company giving us special assistance and depositing a portion of my husband's salary into his account, I was able to make ends meet. However, news got out about the incident, and the neighbors shunned me. I could hear them saying outside of my house,
Did you hear that the husband of that family assaulted a woman?
I can't believe it. He's the enemy of all women. I want his wife to leave this town too. I can't believe she can just live there like nothing happened, and her husband didn't assault a woman.
Every day, I was forced to be showered by words like that. I couldn't understand why this was happening, and anytime I was by myself, I cried. But even still, I went to go visit my husband in prison, and I tried to maintain a smile on my face. But then, one day when I went to visit him, my husband said he wanted to get a divorce.
Let's split up. I can imagine the way that society must be treating you. It's what's best for you. And it's what's best for our daughter, too.
No, I'm not going to do that. You're innocent, aren't you? You didn't do it, did you?
That's true. But there's nothing I can do from here. At this rate, I'm worried about you and the effect that this is having on you.
But I'm never going to give up. If you say that you didn't do it, then I'm going to believe you until the very end. Our baby girl is still little, but no matter what it takes, I'm going to prove that you were innocent. When I said that, on the other side of the thick window, my husband started crying. Even though I tried to remain positive when I spoke to him, in reality, I felt like there was nothing I could do in this situation, and I also didn't have money either. I felt like my hands were tied, and I was devastated and hopeless, not knowing how I could possibly save my husband. But then at that moment, my husband's colleagues and even the CEO suddenly showed up at my house, and I was shocked. The only thing that I could offer them was tea, but instead they offered me a single business card.
This person has agreed to be Mr. Matthews' lawyer. We're going to fight this together.
What? Lawyer? But I don't have that kind of money right now.
You don't need to worry about that. We all chipped in and are covering that cost. We know for a fact that Mr. Matthews was with us that day, so this is ridiculous. We have to prove his innocence.
As it turns out, my husband's colleagues, bosses, and even the CEO of his company all gathered money together, and they hired a certain lawyer to fight my husband's case. Not only that, but the lawyer was a woman. Normally, I would think that a woman would take the side of a female victim, but when she heard the situation, apparently she was happy to take the case. Thank you. Thank you very much. How can I possibly thank you? Tears were streaming down my face as I thanked everybody and bowed down to them. From there, things got moving. I met with that lawyer and I introduced her to my husband as well. My husband was on the verge of giving up, but this time, I saw the life come back into his eyes.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I'm going to do my best. So let's win back your innocence and get you out of there.
My husband and I both bowed to her. The lawyer got straight to work, and she did some research into the woman who claimed to be the victim, named Karen. As it turns out, the first thing we found out was that the victim was a married woman. However, upon further investigation, we received some information from an acquaintance of the victim. According to her, right before the woman got married, she had told her friend that her affair was about to be discovered. However, a few days ago, she was boldly saying that she took care of the situation and everything was going to be fine. And then, the woman's acquaintance said that that was right around the time that my husband was arrested for this supposed assault. The lawyer did deeper research into it, and as a result, she was able to find out who the victim was having an affair with, and managed to track down his address as well. She went to go and question him herself. When she confronted the man, he admitted to having an affair with Karen, but that things ended when Karen's fiancé was about to catch them in the act and find out. That's when Karen decided to lie, that she was assaulted and raped by a man that she didn't know, and she went to the police along with her fiancé. Not only that, but Karen actually ended up threatening the man that she was having an affair with.
You do know that if my fiancé finds out about this, then you're also going to get sued by him. If you don't want to pay that kind of money, then you better keep your mouth shut.
And she had threatened him not to say anything. However, the man said that he felt guilty this entire time that an innocent man was put behind bars, and that's why he told the lawyer everything and was honest about it. The man also promised that he would be a witness in court for the trial, and a couple of days later, I met him at the lawyer's office. When he saw me, he was crying as he got down on his knees to apologize.
I'm so sorry. I didn't think that he was going to be sent to prison. I'm really so sorry.
I was thankful that he was going to be a witness, but to be honest, I couldn't get myself to forgive this man from the bottom of my heart. After that, with the evidence in hand, the lawyer and I once again went to court. When that man stood at the witness desk, the woman that was the victim turned completely pale.
What on earth are you doing here? Hurry up and get out of here. You better not say anything. Keep your mouth shut.
She was panicking and trying to stop him, but the police held her down immediately, and the man exposed the entire truth. The victim, Karen, started to throw a tantrum.
Are you kidding me? How dare you destroy my happiness like this? All men have ulterior motives and want to cheat anyway. All I did was a little bit of the same. I didn't do anything wrong.
She started to cause a commotion in court. After that, of course, my husband's innocence was proved. We won the case in court, and instead the woman was the one that was arrested. Not only that, but it also became clear that the detectives and police who were in charge of my husband's case didn't do a thorough investigation, and they were also punished. The moment that the court declared my husband not guilty, his knees gave out and he crumbled on the spot. My husband was sobbing out of relief and happiness. As for the woman that claimed to be the victim, based off of her words and actions in court, as well as what she did to my husband, the court declared that she had criminal intent and that she didn't show any guilt, and so she was instead sentenced to prison. Of course, the fiancé who had become her husband by now divorced her, and he also sued her for settlement fee. As for the settlement fee towards us, the female lawyer took care of all of that for us, and we were able to win quite the high amount of money in court. When everything was over, and the day that my husband was going to be released from jail, his colleagues and I all went to pick him up. When my husband walked out,
Mr. Matthews, welcome home.
And everybody was thrilled to see him. When my husband saw that, he covered his face with his hands and he was crying. Everybody gathered around my husband, and we all celebrated his release and innocence. Welcome home, honey. When I said that, my husband's face was a mess of tears.
Thank you. Thank you for believing in me until the very end. Thank you.
And he bowed his head down to me, and everybody else over and over again. After that, my husband went back to working at the same company. The incident this time made it onto the news, and my husband's innocence was proven to the rest of society. But even still, we decided that it wouldn't feel great to continue living in the same house. And so his company prepared company housing nearby his office for us. When my husband was arrested for rape, I really thought that my world was ending. And plus, there's no way that I would have been able to prove his innocence by myself. Because my husband was always working hard and treasured his colleagues, that's how we were able to get this result. And every day, I'm thankful. I'm going to treasure this husband of mine for the rest of my life.
My name is Jonathan. I'm a pastry chef, and for many years, I was working at a well-known pastry shop. However, my dreams came true, and I was able to open up my own pastry shop. And finally, that pastry shop was about to open. I did it! I finally did it! This is my own shop! I'm so happy! I can't wait! I worked for about 5 years at the previous pastry shop, and my chef mentor from that pastry shop was really encouraging. He supported me and said, "With your skills, I know that you can definitely succeed. You got this, Jonathan!" I was finally able to open the shop of my dreams with my new staff and the concept that I came up with. And I truly couldn't be happier that all of this was coming true. For my new pastry shop, a lot of the regular customers from my previous shop posted about it on their social media, so I was lucky to have many customers from the very first day of opening. It was a small pastry shop, but I was really careful with my hiring process. I placed a lot of emphasis on polite customer service and made sure that every customer left feeling satisfied. When customers would come back a couple of days later, they would say things to me like,
The cake that I bought the other day was so delicious that I came here to make a reservation for my grandson's birthday cake coming up.
"Thank you very much." And most of the customers became repeat customers, and quickly after opening, things were going really well. However, around the time that 1 month had passed since the opening, one of my employees suddenly said this to me. "Mr. Jonathan, look outside! It's that car again, and it's parked there again!" What, really? Are you serious? About half a month ago, we started to notice that there was a certain car that started parking in our parking lot without permission and then disappearing. And they weren't a customer either. Because our cake shop was really small and only a limited number of customers could come in at a time, we also had very limited parking spaces. That's why it was really troublesome that this car was taking up one whole parking space for multiple hours, and on the bad days, they would park for the entire day there. I wanted to see the driver, so I tried to have a word with her. "Excuse me, we would really like for customers that are not here to come into our pastry shop, so please, refrain from parking in our parking lot."
Excuse me? Okay, yeah, whatever. I'm about to leave anyway, so what's the big deal?
And they jumped into the car and drove off. I learned that the driver was a really flashy woman in her 20s, and she had a bad attitude as well. When it came to customers that were stopping by our pastry shop, generally they were in and out, and so the cars would leave quickly, and the turnover was really fast. Because it happened repeatedly, I did go to the police one time, and I spoke to her about it once again. But when that happened, she came into the shop and actually bought a cake, so I couldn't say anything.
There you go. I bought a cake and now I'm your customer. So I guess you can't complain about it.
And then she left her car there and walked away. When she comes back, I'll tell her again. That's what I thought. But in the end, she didn't return during open hours for the shop. When I got to work the next morning, the car was gone by then. There was no regularity to it, and I could never tell when she was going to come and park her car there, so I wasn't able to come up with much of a strategy against it. But it was still taking up space. That's why I explained the situation to our regular customers, and I decided to put up rubber poles in the space that woman was always parking her car in. Once the shop was closed, overnight, I put up other blocks on the other parking spaces. However, perhaps I must have irritated her, because the next morning when I got to work, all of the poles were destroyed! This is terrible, Mr. Jonathan. Unacceptable!
She's the one that's parking here without permission. I can't believe she would even destroy our property like this.
However, the woman was refusing to listen to anything that myself or my employees were saying to her, and we were becoming more and more troubled by her actions. And then, the three of us had to go to the construction site where we borrowed the rubber poles and deeply apologize that their property was destroyed. I'm terribly sorry about what happened to the poles that we borrowed from you. We'll pay the cost of damages. So how much were they?
Oh, these are made out of rubber. Nothing at all. Don't worry about it. More importantly, judging by the look on your face, looks like you're having quite the tough time.
Yes, that's right. I know I explained the situation to you, but no matter how many times I warn her, even when I call the police, she refuses to stop. Once we go inside of the shop in the kitchen, it's not possible for us to keep checking the parking lot constantly, and she must know that because she aims for that moment, and she parks her car there.
I see. That's tough. So what's that car doing right now at this moment?
She parked it there once again, and it's still there at the shop.
Alright then. Good. Why don't I give that woman a taste of karma?
As he said that, the manager of the construction company turned around and gathered up a number of his young employees. He told me that he was bringing his best men to my shop, and then, after they prepared a number of things, we were able to set up some new and improved rubber poles on the parking space overnight. The next morning, as soon as I arrived to the shop, the woman came storming over to me, her face bright red, looking like a monster.
Hey, you! What on earth is going on here? What have you done?
What are you talking about?
Excuse me? Can you not see with your eyes the situation with my beautiful car? When I tried to take my car out, it got dented and scratched and ruined. Why the hell are those rubber poles so hard? What's going on?
Oh, you mean those poles? They're actually made of metal on the inside. We just painted them on the outside. But also, I don't remember ever telling you that those were rubber poles to begin with. So what have I done wrong here?
When they're painted that color, anybody on Earth would think that those are rubber poles. Anyway, you need to pay for the cost of damages to my car.
What? But why would I need to do that? You're the one who parked here without any permission, isn't that right? So you did this to yourself, didn't you?
Are you kidding me? This is my husband's car, and he's about to come home from his business trip today. So I need to put it back, and I can't do that when it looks like this.
Oh, so you have a husband, is that right? In that case, I'm going to call the police, and I'm going to ask your husband to come here instead.
What? No, wait a minute. Please, don't do that. Stop it.
You can tell me to stop, but it's too late, and plus, I've spoken to you multiple times, over and over again, to please not park here, haven't I?
That might be true, but my husband can't see this.
The woman was a completely different person from her attitude before. She had turned completely pale and was begging me not to call her husband. But of course, there's no way that I was going to answer to that at this point. I immediately called the police, and I asked them to get the woman's husband's contact information out of her. As soon as he got back from his business trip, it was arranged that he would come straight from the train station to my pastry shop. When the husband arrived, I explained everything to him from the very beginning of the situation until now. When I did, the husband turned immediately to the woman and said,
Karen, where the hell were you going to leave the car overnight?
I was just staying over at a friend's house. That's all.
The woman was sweating at this point, but when the husband looked inside of the car, it was over for her. There was an overnight bag, and inside of it was contraceptives as well.
You were having an affair, weren't you? While I was away on the business trip!
No, that's not it. I was just going over to my friend's house. That's all. There must have been some little mistake, so I don't know why that's in there.
She was trying to come up with any excuses that she could, but of course, there was no way that was going to fly. As it turns out, This woman was having an affair with a man that lived near my pastry shop, and while her husband was on a business trip and her lover's wife was back home with her parents preparing to give birth, she was staying over at his place. However, if she parked her car at his house, because it was a bright red car and quite flashy, she was afraid that it might bring too much attention and she might get caught. So when she was going over to his place, she was finding parking that she found on the street. However, when my shop opened up nearby, she said that she didn't have to worry about getting a parking ticket there, and that's why she started using my parking space.
I am terribly sorry about this. I'm going to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. So if you wouldn't mind, can you please allow me to get my car?
The husband was very polite in apologizing and asking me to help remove his car. When I heard that, I called the manager of the construction site once again, and with just one phone call, the metal rubber poles were taken down and the car was able to drive out. This whole time, the woman was crying and apologizing to her husband, but the husband didn't seem like he had any intention whatsoever of entertaining her, and the two of them disappeared. I later found out from one of my employees what happened after that.
That woman who was parking in the car there, I heard that she got a divorce. It turns out that she lives in the same apartment building as one of my friends, and she told me that they got into a huge fight that all of the neighbors could hear.
Oh, really? But I never could have imagined that she was using the parking space to have an affair.
Apparently, her husband works for a top-class company, and he was often on business trips both overseas and within the country. And plus, since they didn't have any kids yet, it looks like the woman was having as many affairs as she wanted with her husband's money. But after this incident, her husband found out about the affairs, and not only did he divorce her, but he collected a settlement fee from her. And apparently, she was sued by the wife of her lover as well for a pretty high settlement fee. So apparently she's riddled in debt now, with nowhere to go and having to somehow pay all of that back.
You really know all the details. You're like one of the old ladies that gossip around town.
That's rude. I'm still in my 20s. I just like to gossip, but who doesn't? But that apartment that my friend lives in is a really nice building. But of course, she was kicked out of that immediately. And I heard that these days she's having to work multiple part-time jobs from morning until night. And she had to move into an old rundown apartment by herself. But she did this to herself, so I don't feel sorry for her.
Well, regardless of what happened, I'm glad we figured it out and that we were able to close the case on this parking lot incident. Seriously, we were saved by the manager of that construction company, so I'm thinking about taking a pastry set over to his company to thank him. What do you guys think?
Oh, that manager. Apparently he loves pastry so much that he's called Mr. Pastry at work, even though he looks a little bit scary.
Seriously, he doesn't look like he would like sweets that much, but I think he'd be pretty happy if we did that.
Alright, let's do it! We're going to make the best pastry set and take it over to him and thank him together. And so, the three of us worked together to make an extra set of sweets in between our regular work. We included cream puffs, different tarts, apple pies, jellies, and puddings, and created a pastry set full of variety. When we brought that over to his company, the manager's eyes sparkled and he was thrilled. At first, I'd finally opened up the shop of my dreams, and customers were finally starting to come in. And so, I was really bothered by this woman who was getting in the way of that. But I'm really glad that this case was closed. I hope I never have to deal with a customer like that ever again.
My name is Toshio. A few days ago, my wife Miyuki passed away. I feel completely defeated, but I can't just sit here and do nothing. I've got to arrange the funeral and the parting ceremony, and there's a million things I have to do. It was difficult figuring out what I needed to do at first, but I was able to figure everything out as I went along. And on the day of the funeral, most of the people in attendance were my relatives and friends. My wife didn't know a lot of people, and her family was very small as well. So I knew most of the people at the funeral, but there was one face that I didn't recognize. Huh? I wonder who that is. He was a tall, handsome young man in a suit. He stood out among the crowd, and although he wasn't the most attractive person you'll ever meet, there was something about him that made him appealing. He's definitely not one of Miyuki's relatives, that's for sure. And I don't think he was her co-worker either. My wife quit her job a while ago, and these past 10 years she's been taking care of things around the house for our family. And so I can't imagine her co-workers from her previous workplace coming to her funeral when they haven't seen each other for over a decade. To be honest, I'm extremely tired from all the preparations I had to make for this funeral. Both my physical and mental health were in shambles, and I was too lazy to go over to this mystery man and ask him who he was. But I am the organizer of this funeral, and I'm also Miyuki's closest kin. I should probably go over there and introduce myself. Excuse me, I'm sorry, have we met somewhere before? When I went up to him and tried to introduce myself, he gave me a cold look and said this to me.
Huh? Have you not heard about me from Miyuki? She didn't mention anything about me?
What? I don't understand. Who is this person supposed to be? Miyuki doesn't have any brothers, so I'm not sure who this person could possibly be. Maybe he's one of her cousins or something? When I was about to ask him who he was again, he said this to me.
I used to be in love with Miyuki.
I was at a loss for words. I couldn't believe the words that just came out of this man's mouth. So I guess my wife was having an affair with this man when she was still alive. I tried to hold myself together and replied with this. You're joking, right? This is her funeral. Now's not the time for those kinds of jokes.
It wasn't a joke. I'm telling you the truth, and that's why I came here today.
That's when he took out his phone and showed me a bunch of photos that he took with my wife. In some of the photos, my wife was hugging and kissing this man. I couldn't believe my eyes. And in all the photos, my wife had a huge smile on her face. I guess she really did love this man. He even showed me a photo of him with her in a hotel room. So they slept with each other too then, huh? I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think either. I was just so tired in that moment that I thought I was going to throw up. I let out a couple of coughs as my wife's boyfriend looked down on me with a grin.
I guess she never told you about me. That's a bit disappointing.
Well, obviously, why would she tell me about you? You guys were cheating on me.
But Miyuki wasn't afraid to tell me all about you. She told me that your only redeeming quality was the fact that you're good at your job, and that everything else about you left a lot to be desired.
What the hell are you doing here? Why'd you come here today?
Well, to pay my respects, and I thought Miyuki would want to see me here. After all, I'm the only man in this world that she's truly loved before.
What did you just say?
Oh yeah, and there's something else as well.
That's when Miyuki's boyfriend told me something shocking.
I want her ashes. We were in love with each other, and her remains belong with me. Wouldn't you agree?
What? Of course not! But the funeral was about to begin, so we had to go to our respective seats. And during the entire funeral, I couldn't think about anything else besides what that man said to me. That bastard, who does he think he is? I'm never going to give her ashes to him. And so for the rest of the night, I completely ignored Miyuki's boyfriend and pretended like he didn't exist. The next day, we're supposed to have the parting ceremony today, but Miyuki's boyfriend showed up again. During one of the speeches, I thought to myself, I can't just ignore him anymore, I have to do something about this. And so I stared Miyuki's boyfriend down and tried to intimidate him. I don't think it worked, though. After the ceremony was over, we all headed to the crematory to pick up Miyuki's ashes. And while Miyuki was being cremated, I went up to her boyfriend to have a word with him. When he turned to face me, he had a smug look on his face, almost like he knew I was coming. And then he said this.
Sure, legally you might be Miyuki's husband, but the only man that she's ever loved in her entire life is me. You're gonna have to accept that.
My wife is dead. No one knows how she actually... But that's when he stopped me mid-sentence and asked me a question.
Well, if that's the case, then when's the last time you ever made love to Miyuki? Do you even remember when it was? How many months ago was it?
Well...
And you guys were sleeping in separate rooms, weren't you? Would she really do that to a man that she truly loved?
He was almost like a cat bullying a rat. He already knows the answer to these questions, but he's making me answer them on purpose.
So now do you understand? I should be the one to receive Miyuki's ashes. Miyuki always said that she never loved you. You meant nothing to her.
Then why didn't she ask for a divorce? I'm sure that she loved me back, and...
Going out on dates can be pretty expensive, and so we needed someone to bring in money for us so we could hang out and spend as much money as we wanted.
So you're telling me that I was basically her personal ATM machine? Is that it?
That's right. That is why you meant nothing to her. She never loved you. You were being tricked this entire time.
Miyuki's boyfriend laughed in my face and walked away with a satisfied look on his face. All right, fine. If that's how you want to go, then two can play at that game. I clenched my fist in rage and determination. I'm her legal spouse, and that has to be good for something. I'll prove that to you, asshole! Miyuki's boyfriend was making fun of me because I wasn't loved by Miyuki, even though I was her husband. But because I was her husband, I can sue Miyuki's boyfriend and have him compensate me for having an affair with my wife. And so I did just that. A few days later, I got a call from Miyuki's boyfriend. He told me that he got my number from one of my relatives that was at the funeral. Apparently, he was quite the player. He went out for drinks every night and didn't have any money saved up in his account. You were acting like a tough guy a couple of days ago, but the moment I sue you, you put your tail between your legs and start begging for mercy? What a joke! I was trying my best to piss him off. You were acting like you did nothing wrong, but I guess you're afraid of me now. Now that's just pathetic, isn't it?
What did you just say?
Besides, what kind of man needs to rely on someone else's salary to pay for his dates? How broke are you? You should be embarrassed, you know.
I'm not broke. And besides, everyone has the right to pursue their own happiness. I haven't done anything wrong. You can't blame me for falling in love with your wife.
I'm tired of your stupid little excuses. You're gonna have to pay me or I'm taking you to court.
Damn it! Fine, if money's what you want, then I'll give it to you.
I thought Miyuki's boyfriend was gonna refuse to pay me at first. Apparently, he doesn't have the best reputation at his workplace, because he's much more focused on going out with his girlfriends than doing a good job at work. And a few days later, he came to my house and gave this to me.
Here you go, take it.
He slammed a bunch of $100 bills on the floor. I wasn't sure if the money was real, so I held them in my hand and checked them thoroughly. But they were real, and there was exactly $30,000 in the stack. That was the amount that I had billed him. And when I looked up at him after checking each and every one of the $100 bills, I saw that he was grinning from ear to ear.
Huh. Take that! You thought I wasn't going to pay you, didn't you? Now give it to me.
Miyuki's boyfriend held up his hand and urged me to give something to him. What are you talking about?
I want Miyuki's ashes. I paid you the $30,000 you asked for, didn't I?
I think you're a bit confused.
What?
Sure, I might have only been Miyuki's husband in name only, but what are you? What's your relationship with Miyuki?
Well, like I said, I'm the only man that Miyuki's ever loved.
Nope. You're as good as a stranger to her. But I wasn't done there. You're not related to Miyuki at all. Sure, you might have been dating her while she was married to me, but that's it. There's nothing that can prove that you guys were in love with each other. You're not a part of her family, and you're definitely not her spouse.
But...
And that's why I don't have to give you her ashes. You have no relationship with my wife, so I'm not obligated to listen to your demands.
What? But that wasn't the promise. You said you'd give me her ashes if I paid you.
No, that's definitely not what I said. And besides... I stopped to stare at Miyuki's boyfriend's face. His face was turning red from rage and embarrassment. I'm Miyuki's husband. I get to decide what I do with her ashes. And unfortunately for you, that's none of your business. His face was as red as an apple at that point, but he didn't know what to say, so he just ran off without saying anything. Apparently, he was able to pay me because he took out a huge loan of $30,000 from a bank. But he wasn't able to pay it back, and now he's borrowing money from the Yakuza to make ends meet. They're constantly after him and his money now, though, and he's so afraid of them that he hasn't been able to go outside in months. Oh yeah, and I ended up burying my wife's ashes in our yard. To be honest, that's more than she deserves. And the other day when Miyuki's boyfriend called me, I told him about this. When he heard that I already buried Miyuki's ashes and that they can't be retrieved, he started crying over the phone. What a loser!
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.